Hi, everybody. Welcome to Budgeting for the Holidays. I'm Terry Conley, and I work for Triangle Credit Union. I'm a marketing manager, and I've been with the credit union for a little over 16 years. So I'm excited that you're here tonight. If you're here tonight, that means that you're interested in how you could possibly save money and maybe some stress for the upcoming season. So we're going to just jump right into it. So what we're going to cover tonight is a little bit of an overview in terms of the actual budgeting process. And we actually offer a couple of different times over the year. We'll talk about budgeting for at the beginning of the year, for a new year. And then we also have another webinar called Budgeting Basics. But we kind of wanted to make sure that we included the aspect of what budgeting is, even for this particular session, simply because once you understand your budget and you understand, your income minus your expenses, that gives you what they call margin, right? So if you have any money left over at the end of the month, that's your margin. And that's really what you're going to tap into when you look at preparing for the holidays and what your gift giving budget is going to be. So we're going to talk about budgeting for a few minutes. We're going to talk about what should be in your budget, and then we'll get right into the budget for the holiday season and then some shopping tips on how to save some money. So what is budgeting? Budgeting is essentially a plan for you on how you're going to use your money and what should be in that plan. So when you're thinking about a budget and this is a monthly budget, right? So you're thinking about what you're going to be spending your money on, what you're going to save, what you're going to give. And here are just some common areas under each of those three categories. So for spending, you're going to look at housing, perhaps if you have vehicles, food, entertainment. On the savings category, that would be your emergency fund, college savings, if you have children who are, of that age, retirement, and then giving would traditionally either, you're giving to families and friends or charitable giving or your church. So one of the things that we want to talk about is the emotions of budgeting. And a lot of people don't want to budget simply because they're afraid of what they're going to uncover, right? And it's interesting to me that the four emotions that are typically tied to budgeting are part of the grief process. So there's denial, there's anger, there's dread, and there's acceptance. But the tools that we want to share with you basically, hopefully, will prepare you for getting away from anything that you feel like that you're not comfortable in budgeting, to the point where it's like, you know what, I'm going to tackle it and I'm going to budget. I'm going to find out where I have margin so that I can jump into this gift giving season without any stress. So in terms of budget items, some of the things that we would typically see on an expense sheet, or the things that you need to budget for, these are monthly items that for your consideration. So food, housing, utilities, which will include your water, electricity, heat, insurances, medical, life, disabilities, homeowners, renters, or auto insurance. And under vehicles, some of the considerations would be maintenance, gas, tolls, and a replacement plan, because honestly, these vehicles don't last forever. Then under loans, we would have potentially any debt that you might have. It would be credit cards, HELOCs, which are home equity lines of credit, personal loans, auto loans, and then cables, your cable subscriptions, or any now everybody really doesn't have cables. A lot of people are moving over to streaming, so then they do have subscriptions, a landline or cell phone, any savings that you would want to allocate through the month, um, student loans, clothing, entertainment, wellness, and pets. So we're going to go over this in a little bit later, but these are the common things that people have on a monthly basis that they have to allocate money to. So one of the things that I would encourage you to do, hopefully at the end, we'll all have some action items that we can take away. This is a resource. It's available on triangleuniversity.org, and I'm going to show you how to get there at the end. We'll just kind of wrap up, and I can take you on a little virtual field trip here. But essentially, this is the expense sheet with all of those items that I've already mentioned. And you can download this spreadsheet. I think it's in a Word format. You can create your own in Excel. You can even just do it with a notepad and, a pen. Or actually, we always use a pencil when we're doing anything budget related. But this is really where you want to start. You need to know what your expenses are per month. And this is action item number 1. All right. So now that we know, we need to know what our expenses are. Let's talk about what type of budget format we're going to need in this whole process. So there are really 3 types of budgets. There's a surplus budget, which means you have money left over at the end of the month. So you've got an income coming in, you've got a series of expenses, and at the end of the month, you actually have money left over from paying all of those expenses. That's a surplus budget, commonly referred to, you're in the black, right? Then there's a deficit budget, which is when you have more expenses than you have income. And at the end of the month, you're now in the red. And then there's a balanced budget, which means that your expenses and your income equal each other. And that's what we really want to look at for our own budgeting purposes. We want to use a zero-based budget where our income equals our expenses. And we're going to take a look at a budget sheet in just a second. There are some common rules or some, little things to think about when you're doing your budget. If you're using paper and pen or an implement of sorts, you always want to use a pencil, actually, because the one thing about budgeting, it seems that you always have to go back and make some adjustments. So use a pencil if you're using paper. Every dollar has an allocation. And at the end of the month, there is no money that's left over. If you do happen to have any money left over in your projected budget, then you would want to take those surplus dollars, meaning the money that's left over from your budget should be allocated to savings. And then if you're over budget at the end during this process, then you want to start over and go back and tweak those expenses. A couple of other things not listed here is that every dollar, well, actually, it does say every dollar has an allocation. Then another way of saying that every dollar has an assignment. So you're going to tell your money what to do at the beginning of the month for the month that's coming up. So we're about to come into October. Right now is a perfect time to start a budget because we're at the end of one month, we're starting the beginning of a new month. And that's really when you want to set up a budget. You want to do it at the beginning of the month. And I would really encourage you, when you're doing a budget, stick with it for about 3 to 6 months, because this is it's a process that if you're not familiar with it, it's brand new. It can be uncomfortable. If you're doing it with a partner, that even adds another element to it. So, just give yourself a lot of grace in this process. Okay. So this is our budget sheet. This is what we call our zero-based budget sheet, or zero balance budget sheet. And this also is available on triangleuniversity.org under resources. Now we're in phase 2 of the workshop where we really want to start talking about what we're going to do for the actual shopping part of it. So when you're ready to do your shopping, we have to prepare very similarly to what we did with our budget. Now we've got to figure out who's on our list, what is going to be on, what are we going to buy them, and then how much are we going to spend. And so this is a type of list that you can create, or you can, just write it down. You can get this off Pinterest. I actually use a digital budget. So this is something similar to what I would create in Excel, where I have my husband and my 2 children. And for me, it's, I have a budget, right? I want to keep it under $1,000 for the season. I don't want to overspend, so I'm really going to make myself aware of that and constantly remind myself at the top of the spreadsheet. But I list basically who's on my list, what I want to get them, and then how much I want to spend or how much I will spend. And the one thing that is important to me, and it might not be important to you, so you have to kind of, this becomes your own, how you want to structure it. But what's important to me is that everybody has the same amount of gifts underneath the tree. So for me, it's, I want to have 5 items per person in my family. And you can kind of see that, I think for the most part, my husband is going to get a little bit of a more expensive Christmas than my 2 daughters, but I am trying to keep it so that everybody has the same amount. There are some ways that you can limit your list, and I'm starting to see this more and more particularly with our own family as well as some friends. People are really starting to reduce the number of people on their list simply because the money's not there to support the gift giving anymore. So, and you can do that a number of ways. If you have a large family and you're buying for a lot of people, even outside of your immediate family, you can always encourage them to, do a Yankee swap, draw names so that you're, maybe only bringing one gift. And regardless if it's a Yankee swap or drawing names, you can definitely encourage or suggest having a spending limit of, maybe $50 per person. You could also, if you have family members, multiple family members, you can think about, buying one gift for the family. And then in this situation, you could also encourage them to maybe create a theme around that. And let me give you an example of that. So my best friend lives in New Hampshire with her husband. Her husband is originally from Ohio. And they, at one point, were buying, upwards of about 20 gifts for each family member. And then they suggested, hey, let's just do a family gift. So then they said, we'll make it a theme every year. And then they would get together and kind of discuss what kind of theme it was going to be. One of the coolest themes that I thought was a state theme, so that my friend would buy everything from New Hampshire, put it in a box, and send it to her family in Ohio. And in Ohio would do the same. All of the material, all of the gifts that were inside the box were something that was made in Ohio, and then they would send it to their family in New Hampshire. So that's just kind of like a fun, something to consider. It's very, very fun. And you can get very creative when it comes to limiting your list on how to do that. Okay, so now let's talk about some tips on how to save money in this gift giving season. One of the things that I wanted to mention is sleuth shopping. And what that means is that you aren't going to pay the first price that you see for an item. You really want to shop around. And one way to do that is when you go out, let's say you're at the mall, you're going to bring your phone and you see a pair of jeans. And then, it's like, don't buy those jeans. You want to go online and do some Googling. And then basically what ends up happening is once you start to Google, you can see in this example here, I Googled the best price for Levi 512 jeans for men. There's a huge difference here between the local store and Amazon. So when you do some slew shopping, you can literally save hundreds. So online shopping has revolutionized slew shopping. With a simple Google search, you can find the best price for almost any product. And once you find the best price, you could show it to the store representative and ask for a price match. And it doesn't always work out, but for the most part, I know that some stores do. So something to think about. Tip number 2 is start early and save. Now, what we're looking about for this particular tip is that when you get paid, let's say for me, I get paid twice a month, right? So I want to start as early as possible and start putting some of that money aside. And if you go back to the budget, there was like $500. I feel like I think that's what we ended up with as a surplus. So that $500, you've got $500 a month. So that means if I have a budget, I want to stick to $1,000. That means that in October and November, I can put money aside from my paycheck or our paychecks into a savings account. And now I've got money built up. And that's going to save me time. It's going to save me money in the long run. And it's going to save me a tremendous amount of aggravation. So start early and save. Tip number 3 is our goal builder tool. This is pretty new for Triangle and our members. So it's very easy. Simply, you can go into, if you have mobile banking, you can go into mobile banking and look for Goal Builder, and it would literally walk you through the steps on how to sign up. But here's just a quick overview is you set up your goals and you can select from 10 goal categories or create your own. You assign the overall amount of money and how often you want to allocate that money to your goal. Then you get to watch the progress of how once your goals are in place. And essentially what you're doing here through the Goal Builder tool, you're watching your money grow, and it really does eliminate a lot of stress. So setting your goals with Goal Builder, like I said, you can access through online or mobile banking. You want to set up the goal, set up the amount, set up your start and your target end date, and then set the frequency of your allocations. Tip number 4, last year's models work. This is particularly true with anything to do with technology. And I'm in the marketing department, and I will tell you firsthand, you want to avoid high, anything that's like blingy, like, don't fall for that trap, right? So avoid high marketing strategies. Review the features of anything that, if it is technology, does last year's models fit the features that you're looking for? If it does, then you could save hundreds of dollars rather, on last year's model. So that's just something to think about. And a lot more people are doing that. Tip number 5, save yourself a lot of aggravation and don't use your credit card. Using a credit card will essentially, a lot of times it means that it will lead to overspending. So use your debit card, upload your debit card onto your mobile wallet for convenience and an extra layer of security. And then if you do have to use your credit card, you want to pay off your card if you can. And then obviously monitor your spending column. And, I go back to my online banking transactions all the time. And especially during the gift giving season, I want to make sure that I'm not overspending. So once you have those columns set up for your gift giving budget, then go back and add those items in and all of the expenses that are associated with it. Doorbuster steals rarely pay off. So don't fall for these. Look for the deals every day. You can shop early, and then you want to stick to your plan. So, and then I encourage you to check out TCU University for more webinars that we have. There's a lot of tools out there. The budget sheet is out there. The expense sheet is out there. And we will definitely be uploading our webinar for this series up there as well.